Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would review this little video that I thought would be very particularly interesting. And since Mr. Naoya Inoue had his recent fight against that of Roman Cardenas, at least I believe that that was the opponent's name. Of course, Inoue was in a very, very tough fight where he got knocked down in that fight because he was getting a little bit too overzealous and kind of looking a little bit too much for the kill. Sometimes Inoue, has a little bit of an issue with that. But there's no doubt in my mind that Inoue that he is an exceptional level boxer, that he pretty much can do whatever he wants to within that ring. It's just all really about him tightening certain things up. And that's not me stating that, once again, that he may not have certain faults, but Inoue, is a very intelligent boxer. And he's someone that, in my personal view, that when you take a look at him inside that boxing ring, he pretty much can fight in whatever style that he wants to. If he wants to outbox you within the long range, he can do that and, kind of fight on the back foot. If he wants to fight you within the mid range, he can do that. If he wants to brawl with you, he can do that. Inoue can fight great within a multitude of styles. But, anyways, Inoue, of course, it's going to be very interesting to see where his career goes because within these next few fights, it's really going to determine how great Inoue actually is, especially when he faces guys like MJ Akhmadaliev. Although I think that, he's more than likely probably going to dominate that fight or at least clearly win that fight. But the fights that I'm really interested in are the Nick Ball fights, the Jundo Nakatani fights, the Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez fights, and a couple of the other fights, maybe the Bruce Shoo Shoo Carrington fights, maybe the Raspiel Espinoza fight, but I've already stated that Espinoza, in my view, is just way too big for that weight class. In my view, he's kind of a weight bully, but either way, it's going to be interesting to see him, in either any one of those fights. But this podcast right here, it says All the Smoke fight, I believe hosted by that of Andre S.O.G. Ward, who of course was a former all-time great level fighter himself. Of course, was the former number one pound-per-pound fighter after he defeated Sergey the Crusher Kovalev. Well, he had Steve Von Fulton, who, of course, to this day, is still Inoue's biggest win on his record. For those of you that don't remember, that fight was looked at as a big 50-50 level fight heading into that fight, and a lot of people, even including myself, predicted Steve Von Fulton to win that fight. And when you talk about it overall, it was a very, very interesting, barometer test, or it was going to be a barometer test about how great both of those fighters actually were, but especially Inoue, because Inoue had kind of been put high on the pound for pound list, but he hadn't really fought anybody to really for sure put him in the top five. But once he had defeated someone like a Steve Von Fulton, there was no doubt about it that Inoue deserved to be in that conversation. But anyways, Andre S.O.G. Ward, he was talking to Steve Von Fulton, and Steve Von Fulton, of course, he kind of was talking about certain things about the fight that I just thought were very interesting and revelatory, certain things that I've been stating the whole entire time. But of course, he also states that he believes that he kind of lost that fight due to the weight. But Steve Von Fulton, you can also tell that during this interview that, that he kind of knows that that's even an excuse. And what Steve Von Fulton is going to tell you is what I've been telling you the whole entire time, which is that Steve Von Fulton, when he got into that ring with Inoue, he did not think that Inoue was going to be anywhere near as technically sound or anywhere near as good as what he was within that fight. But anyways, let's see what Steve Von Fulton has to say in Andre S.O.G. Ward. I just thought that it was a very interesting interview. Let's get straight into it.
Get back to the career. In 2022, you defended against Daniel Ramon. And then when did the Inoue fight start being discussed?
I think the media been like saying stuff about it before that, but I feel like right after that was like, that's when they start putting their foot on the gas with it. Like
your team?
Everyone. No, not my team, but like everyone.
Okay.
Like calling for the fight. And if you got the whole world calling for the fight, the media, then Japanese fans, then, PBC.
Well, I'm not really sure if the whole world was really calling for the fight, Steve Von Fulton. I think that more you wanted that fight, and certain, people, especially from the LDBC and the media channels, because they thought that Inoue was going to get exposed once he got in the ring against someone like that of Steve Von Fulton. Then it didn't happen. And now, of course, it ended up even worse for them because with the LDBC and the media, what they love to do, just like that of old media, or what certain boxing fans love to do in general, is that They love to hype up one of their favorite fighters, even if they don't really have the proven resume. And they love to say, well, since you're, hyping up this other fighter so much, if you're going to give, that fighter this amount of credit, then if he beats him, then he should be top 5 pound per pound as well. Well, Inoue got in the ring against Stephon Fulton, and he completely dominated him. So the thing was is that they didn't expect that to happen. So once that ended up happening, of course, they had to, at certain times, tear down his resume even more or allege that he was ducking certain guys like MJ Akhmadaliev. That's basically how it works. That's how the tear down game works. But anyway.
Yeah, all I'm going to automatically know, and then his team going to automatically know, like, all right, so this going to make some money. Like, let's put this together. But it came to a point where I'm like, yo, like, I don't want to stay at 22 because that was getting rough for me to make, especially after the Brandon fight. That joint was rough. But then I still wound up doing it again for Daniel Roman, and I made the weight perfect that time. So, mind you, I fought one time that year. I fought Daniel Roman. Then another year come back around, I had to wait for Inoue to come up. And I'm still sitting there like, yo, I don't think I could. I reached out to people at PBC and everything, like, yo, I don't think I can make this weight, bro. Like, and then he got injured, and they pushed it back 3 more months. I'm like, I still was like, yo, I don't think, like, y'all know what I'm going to have to go through to make this weight. I wound up still doing it, and I went out there, bro. We had to buy, we bought.
Once again, Mr. Stephon Fulton, no offense, but I'm just not falling for this quote-unquote excuse as to why you ended up being so compromised in that fight, at least allegedly, according to you, was because of the weight or because you were drained. Once again, fighters always like to make excuses after the fact, like Lomachenko did the same thing, or Gilmore Rigondeaux did the same thing when they lost some of their fights. Like when Rigondeaux lost to Vasily Lomachenko, now, of course, he didn't really have a pre-made excuse. He just said during the fight that he had a broken hand. But Lomachenko said heading into the Teofimo Lopez fight that he had a shoulder issue. Well, even if you had a shoulder issue, maybe he tore it during the fight. But the thing is that, so many of these fighters, they claim that heading into the fight that they have an issue. Right, but so what that tells me then is that you thought you were good enough in order to beat that fighter, even with that issue. So then you either underestimated his ability or you didn't have anything in the first place. So what that tells me is that you thought that you were in good enough form to beat that guy. So I'm sorry, but I'm just not falling for this shit. It is what it is. But I'm not going to go after Stephon Fulton too hard because, elite level boxers, it's very challenging and very hard for them to deal with that first loss in their career, especially when they are very talented and a very great fighter like what a Fulton is. He's now a 2-weight division champion. He completely dominated Brendan Figueroa in that rematch. He's someone that is an exceptional level talent. He's someone that is very, very talented. And it's very hard for some of those fighters in the first loss of their career to really accept that.
A treadmill and put it in one of their hotel rooms, and we bought heaters and put heaters in there. And I used a sauna for a month. I had to use that sauna every day through everything I did.
How long was you out there?
I was only out there for like 2.5 weeks. 2.5 weeks, 2 weeks.
You felt like that was enough time?
Nah.
It wasn't?
It wasn't. I thought it would be, though.
It was.
Even Andre Ward is asking him, like, you thought that was enough time? And I'm not sure if Andre Ward's asking that legitly, but it almost sounds like Andre Ward is like, come on, bro. Like, you thought 2 weeks was enough time?
18, 19
I felt like I was a little younger, so when you're young, you feel like you can do whatever.
But, you had time to reflect on that. What's your takeaway from that fight? What worked? What didn't work? Just
I should have trusted my body and went up and stopped letting the fans engage you in what they want you to do.
So you think it was more the weight than anything?
I feel like it was more the weight because when I got in there, I couldn't.
You can tell that Andre Ward is not completely buying the shit that he's selling. There's no offense, but I'm not buying it either. You did not lose that fight because of the weight, bro. Just stop.
No.
And even at 126, you can tell that Stephon Fulton is not the biggest guy at 126.
If I wanted to let anything off, like I wasn't scared. I wasn't nervous when I was in there. Like people already knew I'm not scared of a scary fighter. But
what that tells me right there is that Stephon Fulton, that he has a little bit of an insecurity in that fight, that people either called him scared within that fight or he believes that he fought a little bit scared within that fight. And listen, Stephon Fulton, you can state all this stuff all you want to, but at the end of the day, I watched that fight several different times, even a dozen times for myself. because I thought that it was a brilliant performance from Inoue and it was a great watch. But the thing is that you did fight a little bit scared in certain times, because once you figured out that Inoue had the boxing ability that he had, and once he had that level of power, you were thinking, uh-oh, how the hell am I supposed to get this guy? Because I don't have any planned attacks for this guy, and I thought that he was just going to come in there and try to brawl with me, and I thought that this is going to be a lot easier, but this dude actually has very good feet, very quick feet, and on top of that, he's quicker and just as technical, if not more than me. So Steve Von Fulton knew that he was in for it very early.
Everything was like delayed off. I couldn't really get my groove. To the point where I'm just in there like, I'm now at that point I'm trying to.
You couldn't get your groove because Inoue did not fight the fight that you thought he was going to fight. Steve Von Fulton heading into that fight, and a lot of the American boxing fans, especially, mainly the Black American boxing fans, especially. And once again, that's not a dig at them whatsoever. It's just, when you take a look at the past. Usually, of course, the Black American fighters, they have a quote-unquote slicker style, quicker feet, and, better maneuverability. Oftentimes, that has been the case. But then every once in a while, you will have a fighter like a Lomachenko or a Canelo Alvarez or a Usyk or Inoue in a way that is able to somewhat get certain qualities of that style, or is also able to approximate that style or compete with that type of style. And they had no idea that they had, that type of skill set. So when Inoue, got in there, he did not expect anywhere near overall as much as the movement, nor the coordination, nor the boxing IQ that Inoue had. He thought that Inoue was just going to try to brawl and break him down. And once Inoue, overall proved that he wasn't going to do that, and that he fought an extraordinarily intelligent fight, Fulton knew he was in for it.
I want him to engage with me to fight, but he already had his.
You see that? What Steve Von Fulton just stated once again. I've been telling people this for a very long time. Fulton thought that Inoue just wanted to engage. He thought that heading into that fight, that Inoue was just going to try to brawl with him, or that Inoue wouldn't be able to handle the movement. And then once he figured out that he did, and then on top of that, that he had a better game plan than him, and that he was probably a better boxer than him, he knew he was in for it. Because what was he really going to be able to do? He couldn't hit Inoue, and then on top of that, the power coming back at you is one-shot knockout power. Fulton barely threw after the first couple rounds because he just had such a big problem really getting any offense off.
Game plan, he wasn't going to do this. He was being smart. Which, you know what I'm saying? You got to take.
You see that? Listen to what Steve Von Fulton just said there. Let's rewind this.
To the point where I'm just in there like, I'm now at that point I'm trying to fight. I want him to engage with me to fight, but he already had his game plan. He wasn't going to do this. He was being smart. Which, you know what I'm saying? You got to take.
See that? Steve Von Fulton just stated that, I thought that he was going to try to engage with me, but he was being smart. See, I've already told people this. Fulton had no idea that Inoue was going to come in there and fight as smart as what he did.
Your head off for somebody that's being smart. I wanted him to engage, like, to just rumble me at that point because I couldn't box at that. I'm like, how you step back moving? I couldn't do none of that, really. So I'm just sitting there like this, like, taking small steps to him to show him, like, yo, like, come on, let's fight.
That stabbing jab that Inoue threw to Steve Von Fulton's body, that really is one of the main punches, if not the main punch that the elite boxers throw, that really end up winning them the fight. Because it ends up once again setting up so many other punches and slightly losing confidence of the other fighter, because it's not the most impactful punch at first, but it's something that will set up your punches later on, maybe hide a certain offense, especially that right hand that Inoue, of course, landed on him later, which was the beginning of the end for Steve Von Fulton in round 8, I believe that it was. But then on top of that, it's a punch that'll start to land first, and it'll put the pressure on your opponent to start landing a bit more, because the jab will land, and they will start to feel it after a while.
He ain't go for that.
What you think is his greatest asset?
His ring IQ was good. He had a good ring.
Is the ring IQ better than the power?
It was.
The power.
I'm gonna refrain me put that back. It wasn't just ring. It wasn't a ring IQ. It was the movements.
It was everything. You see what Steve Von Fulton's saying there? Once again, pay attention and read in between the lines of what he's stating there. Fulton is stating overall that the movement. See, he didn't expect Inoue to fight like this at all. He thought Inoue was going to come straight forward and try to brawl with him, and be one of those regular fighters that were not going to be able to compete with that style. Once he showed difference, Steve Von Fulton knew he was in deep shit.
The the distance and how he do things. The power was cool, but
And the way that Inoue fought in that fight was so important because Inoue ended up having better feet and quicker feet than Stephon Fulton did, and on top of that, a better jab. And once that occurred, Fulton knew that he really didn't have any chance to win that fight. Because what was he really going to do in order to beat Inoue? Inoue's punches were just as sharp, if not sharper, in that fight. He was quicker than him, and then on top of that, he could have knocked him out, at a punch with any given moment in time in the fight. So once he knew that Inoue was moving in and out and fighting very intelligent with the movement and the angles and the footwork, it was done.
power didn't hurt me up until that time. You know what I'm saying? Like, when I felt the power, that's what made me want to engage more. I'm like, oh, that ain't what everybody was. It just felt like pressure. Like, it's pressure just keep hitting you. It just felt like pressure.
And I'm not going to state there overall that Stephon Fulton is lying, because a lot of people may state that, oh, Fulton, he's lying, all that's bullshit, blah, blah, blah. Well, if you actually listen to a lot of boxers when they get in the ring with certain people, whether it be Tyson Fury against Deontay Wilder or certain people against impactful punchers, some boxers will state that they felt the power constantly, but some boxers will say he hit so hard that I didn't feel a thing. So the thing is that Inoue definitely is an A+ level puncher. There's no doubt about it. But I have no doubt about it that some of these guys, when they get punched by Inoue, that until it's the right punch, that they really don't feel it, because Inoue is just a dude where he's just a colossal puncher. Like, that dude's power is just on a whole nother level.
But it was that shot that I didn't see that did the job.
See that? The importance of the stabbing jab to the body.
You know what I'm saying? But he a good fighter, though.
And that was a tough loss for you,
He's a great fighter.
obviously.
Hell yeah.
And you struggled for a little bit after that fight. Personally, how did you work through that, and how did you get over it? And you may not be over it. I don't know.
No, I'm over it now. Because I don't give a F with nobody.
So when somebody bring it up, you don't.
I'm not going to say that you're over it, Stephon Fulton, no offense, but you're not over it if you're making the excuses about the quote-unquote weight. Sorry, but it is what it is.
Feel no type of way
Hell
about it?
no. I even was making jokes around, like, damn, I gotta stop. Like, I was making jokes, like, to the point where he had to, like, yo, come on, man, chill. But that's how I had to loosen myself up to prepare myself for the stuff that everybody was gonna say. I had to crack jokes on my damn self. Well, it was hard at first, getting over it, cause then you see how the whole world turned.
Talk about that. Talk about that. Talk about that.
The media, everybody. Then there'll be certain people that I'll see outside when I was champion. Yo, bro, this and third. Then now you ain't champion anymore. They just turn their back. And
The
look
phone
at you.
stopped ringing.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that you learn. And that's why I stated in my most recent video about Inoue. Inoue says all this stuff about, well, I just want to put on an entertaining fight for the fans. Yeah, that's great until you lose. And then watch how many thousands of millions of them turn their back on you.
As much, huh?
Hell yeah.
You never, overall, once again, completely base your career around your employer or the fans that apparently allege to be a fan of you. Never. You always have to do what's best for yourself. And once again, at the end of the day, boxers are remembered for the fights that they win, not always just about how entertaining they were. You're remembered a little bit because of both. But the greatest of the greats are remembered for a combination of both. Inoue is always going to be an entertaining fighter. But Inoue needs to make sure, first and foremost, that he wins those fights.
Then it's crazy. I had this one time my oldest son came to me like, Dad, you lost. How you lose? This and that. So now it's looking like.
His son say, Daddy, you got your ass kicked. What happened?
He said that.
Yeah. I felt some way about it.
You gonna feel that.
Yeah, I felt some type of way.
There was a video about Charles Barkley, all the way back in the 90s. I believe it was the 93 season, where he faced off against Michael Jordan on the Chicago Bulls, of course, and he was with the Phoenix Suns. Now, the LeBron James fans' narrative is that, Michael Jordan never fought shit in the finals. But Michael Jordan had to face off against the Phoenix Suns team that was looked at as more talented. The Phoenix Suns had Dan Marley, although, of course, many people would just take a look at him as a white boy. He was a 3-time All-Star, and something that was not bad defensively at that time. Kevin Johnson was a 3-time All-Star, of course, until he got injured, I believe with an ankle injury or something like that. And then he was never the same, one of the top point guards, I believe. Of course, they also had that of Rick Dumas, I think his name was, or something like that. And also they had Charles Barkley. and they were like a 50-win team before Charles Barkley got there, I believe. Then he turned them into a 60-win team, I believe. And Michael Jordan beat them within 6. Charles Barkley told his daughter that they were going to win the championship. And then I think they went down either 3-1 or 3-2, something like that. And he realized that Michael Jordan was just on a whole nother level. Even though Charles Barkley never wanted to give the satisfaction to anybody else that they were better than him, Charles Barkley was on record as stating that that was the first time that he maybe even thought in his own mind that someone may have been better than him. So, and then his daughter approached him and said, "Daddy, you said that you were going to win the championship." And then he said, "Baby, I don't know if we're going to win the championship either."
About it, but I ain't let it like really get to me. Cause I'm like, he don't understand like at all. He didn't understand it. Cause then he had his friends coming to him like, "Yo, your dad got knocked out." So I had to explain, bro, I ain't get knocked out. I got stopped. But I didn't get knocked out.
It's a difference, bro.
It's a major difference, bro. Yeah. But if somebody say, "Oh, you got knocked out," I say, "All right." Yeah. But I didn't get knocked out. Yeah. I was up. Yeah. And he got me down. The ref just hugged me. And
well, Fulton, had the fight been continued anymore, you would have been sleeping with the fishes. So, I mean, but I get it. He's kind of joking around, a little bit here, to a degree. There's a little bit of, pride and truth in what he's saying, but you got stopped, bro. It is what it is. You got stopped and you got knocked out. It is what it is. Because if the fight would have continued on any longer, you would have been dead. So let's just cut that shit.
Look the rough back.
Bro, I used to really be thinking about that in training camp. My kids going to school on Monday, bro. After the weekend, I used to think about that.
How they day gonna be. And then now I'm already thinking, because I went back, I was in one of my apartments at the time. Like, it ain't that I couldn't buy a house, it's just that I had other stuff going on. So I go back to the apartment, then you got everybody that's there, that's you are, and like that. I'm like, yo, y'all ain't gotta do that, but they don't know how that, you know what I'm saying? They don't know that. So I was just dealing with a lot. Family, mom issues again on that behalf. Like, I feel like that's one that really, I forgave her for it. Shout out to my mom, but I forgive you for everything you did and everything we've been through. You're not a bad person. She is a good person at heart, but she just do effed up things, So it was, my sisters had called me like when I got back. Mind you, that was a long flight back from losing. Long flight back. Yeah, like 20-something hours.
I felt double that, though, after taking a
I'm
loss.
just sitting there crying and everything.
Man.
So I'm in Houston at the time. I had a crib out there, so I'm in Houston at the time, man. My sister was crying about it, whatever the case may be. Then they like, mommy called us, right? Like in the midst of it happening. Like I wasn't out. Like I wasn't, the fight wasn't over yet, but in the midst of me getting dropped the first time, she called my sisters and said, "Damn, they go my house."
Oh, I read about that.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
That one cut me deep because like, damn, you know what I'm saying? I cried about that. And plenty of times I felt like I hated her, but I know I didn't.
That's heavy.
Yeah.
That's heavy.
It is. That's something to say. Because, I look at it like...
Somewhat sometimes, because I grew up in somewhat, in certain rapport, where I, always had a little bit of a strained relationship as well with certain family members. But, sometimes people, they end up doing stuff without realizing that what they're doing may be quote-unquote narcissistic or maybe quote-unquote hurting you. But, it is what it is. Apparently he sounds like he's sorted it out with his mother. But, wouldn't be surprised if she had a lot of quote-unquote narcissistic tendencies or, she probably is a relatively good person is what he's stating, but there's just certain things that make her kind of act out of pocket at times. And there's just certain people that are like that. They're not bad people necessarily, but they have certain traits about them, more than likely because of the way that they were raised, overall that will, kind of put them, almost on the narcissistic, baseline or, something along those lines. So it's going to be up to you whether you believe it's it's enough to cut out those people or if it's worth it to keep those people in your life, because we should not be keeping negative energy that much into our lives.
I always wanted that relationship with
even blood family.
My mom. Like, I'm watching all my... So I used to always lean on to my peers, like my friends and stuff like that. Because I see how their relationship is with their family. I never had a relationship like that. My family, all they did was argue.
What that tells me is that Steven Fulton, especially since he's not talking about his father, that he potentially grew up fatherless. Now, maybe I'm wrong about that. But, and that he relied a lot on his mother. And that his mother overall, that he felt that she was really not there for him a lot. or that he could not trust her in terms of actually caring about, his initial feelings or certain things like that, which of course is pretty much what a mother is supposed to do. Very unfortunate, but that's why, there are certain strained relationships at times with sons and fathers, or, sons and mothers, or daughters and mothers, daughters and fathers, because, or, parents and their children, I guess I should just say, because they truly believe that they don't really have their true interests in heart.
Are you
Or at heart, excuse me.
fight one another? My dad used to always say, like, why y'all argue so much like y'all hate one another? But that's how we was raised. So when that happened,
That's how a lot of people are raised in America. And that's why, once again, not to get into other things, but you got to be really careful with who you marry. You got to be really careful overall with who you did, because marriage is basically almost like a misery contract these day and ages. Divorce is so high because at the end of the day, people get married so quickly. And, so many of these women today, they overall try to control the men, overall, and take the leadership role and basically try to be domineering, and basically for the past 40 some for the past 40 some years, marriage has really been, dictated, and, pretty much they come up with that saying, happy wife, happy life. And in my personal view, at the end of the day, the man is supposed to be the leader, of the household. That will bring logic and order, and on top of that, self accountability into that of the household. When you are raised usually by that of women, usually what that entails and usually what that brings to the table is a lack of self accountability, over emotionality. And that's why you see certain men, they end up arguing a lot like a woman, and they end up getting, emotionally kind of invested in certain things that they probably shouldn't, because they were raised by their mother. So, you got to be very, very careful about that. But there's so many marriages in this day and age to where the parents, it's been going on really for the past 40 years, to where so many parents, they end up arguing and, basically acting like they never loved each other, and they probably do have a little bit of love for each other, but it's just, that's how a lot of marriage is. But, just a piece of advice from me, because I've seen that, all the time growing up with a certain amount of relationships, especially, with, other households and stuff like that. It's not worth it to be in a relationship like that. And if someone acts like they don't love you, or if someone acts like they're always going to try to start something with you, or that if they berate you or are negative too much in your life, you just got to cut them off. And I don't care overall if they're blood family, or if they're your quote unquote girlfriend, your wife, whatever it is. Eventually, if someone is too much of a negative, you got to cut them off, period.
that don't take a peep.
And that's why I always advise that if you marry somebody, you be with them for at least about 3 to 5 years. And if you're going to have children with that girl, you better be sure to, once again, overall, really know that person. Be with her for about a good 5 years before you have a child, and possibly wait till your later 20s or early 30s, because once you have a child, that is a huge responsibility, because it's not just about you and her anymore. It's about, shaping that child into being a good member of society, and making sure that, he is not falling into these traps of a lot of other people, and that he doesn't become a degenerate, or that, he doesn't get abused or treated badly somewhere else. I have friends overall that have had 4 different baby mamas, or been married 4 different times, once again, over the past 20 years. And now they have no control over the child whatsoever, or they don't have a whole lot of part in their lives. And you got to think 20 years later on down the line like that. If you're going to have a child, you must make sure that that woman is worth having a child with. Because if not, then all that's going to end up in is divorce. And the court system favors the women most of the time anyway. So they're going to get with a stepfather or another man, possibly. And you don't know what that man is going to be about, because you're no longer in that child's life, at least nowhere near as much. So that stepfather could be abusing them, molesting them, abusing them. I've seen overall certain situations to where I've seen kids growing up like that, because their father was not mainly in their life anymore. And you have a lot of these women, and once again, I'm not stating all of them, but you have a lot of these women that, they end up having kids, from several different baby fathers or baby daddies. So you got to be very, very careful with that. You don't want to end up as one of these dudes that's paying child support. First of all, that's out of your pocket, messes you up financially, and then on top of that, you're not, in charge of the household whatsoever, and you can't really see your child most of the time anyway, because you ended up, getting the wrong broad pregnant. So, I mean, you got to really think 20 years later on down the line, when you have a situation like that, you got to really be careful.
Side of me. Yeah, I don't take a piece. Like I'm like, damn, you supposed to be like, I'm supposed to be able to come to my mom and cry on my mom's shoulder, you know, you feel like somebody that can nurture me. You know what I'm saying? Even as a grown man, we still need those things, not to that severity.
You should always be able to rely on your parents, at least overall, for some sort of emotional support or at least logical support. And if you cannot rely on your parents for that, then I'm not going to say really what good are they, but they did not do their full job as parents, in my personal view. Because parents, of course, there's certain people that they always love to say all this stuff about, well, I raised my kids, I put a roof over the head, all stuff is that. Right, but if you're a father and if you don't have any wisdom, or if you don't guide your sons or your daughters, especially about what to do and what not to do and how to build their life the most successful way, then no offense, but what type of a father really are you? It just is what it is. And then if you're a mother, but your son or your child can't even come to you for emotional support, or to cry on your shoulder, then what type of mother are you really? So it's like, no offense, but many people, they end up having a child and they really should not have a child because they're really not going to be ready. And there's certain people that are never ready to be parents. There's certain people that just should never be parents. And there's no offense against Fulton's mother or anything like that, but it sounds like she has a lot of narcissistic tendencies. And I'm not stating overall that she's a quote unquote bad person whatsoever necessarily, but there's just certain people that even if they have a lot of good qualities, they also have a certain amount of narcissistic or toxic qualities as well that they also got to get through, but they've never really faced in the mirror to look through and really try to work on.
The kid, but we still need that shoulder, that woman. That's the role that the wife take on now at that point.
Agreed.
But
Did you address it with her when you got back? Still to this day?
No, I ain't. She apologized for it because she knew why. Yes, because she knew why I wasn't talking to her and things like that. But she said, damn, they go my house.
Dang.
And in my head, I'm like, damn.
Andre Ward said, damn.
The fight wasn't even over yet. You counted me out before they even did this. You know what I'm saying? So I bet we go through things in this sport, bro. But people don't see these things. People don't know these things at all. And just reflecting on being out Japan, I had an amazing experience out there.
They love you.
Yeah, hell yeah.
They be showing love.
But I ran three times a day just to make that weight. With that sun on in that room. I was in that room. I was just like I lived in that room, bro. I came outside like 2 times. And that was to go to the Balenciaga store and another store. And that was it.
Boy said, I'm going to the Balenciaga
Right.
store. So we're going to do that.
Yeah, I'm going to buy me something.
Bro, come on, bro. Three times a day.
Yeah, I had to make the weight.
You can tell Andre Ward is like, come on, bro. You ain't running no fucking 3 times a day. You can tell once again, Andre Ward, that's like the 3rd time he's let on like, sorry, bro, love you, but I'm not buying the shit that you're selling. Come on.
Man, it's going to be hard to win a fight like that, bro.
Exactly. You tell him, Andre Ward. See, Andre is not falling for this shit.
Hey, if I said that, if people knew all of it, then he making excuses. Come on, bro.
Dang.
That's why you gotta have this stuff on film, and I got this stuff on film. Yeah.
No offense, Steve, on film, but it is an excuse. But I'm not gonna go too hard against you. I just hope that eventually that you are willing to accept the reality that Inoue was just a better fighter than you. And Steve Von Fulton is a tremendous fighter. It's even harder for a tremendous or a great fighter, to lose because they're so used to winning and they do a lot of things right. But the thing is about Inoue is that it's almost like the story of John Jones and Daniel Cormier, or like, I don't even know how else to compare it. Like there's certain guys that, are just, really talented. And then there's guys that are like built in a lab. When you talk about guys like Inoue was built in a lab. Like he's perfect. Like it's almost like, Roy Jones Jr. versus that of a Bernard Hopkins.
I got my whole trip on film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was hard, bro.
But anyways, that pretty much is about it for this podcast. I think I'm going to review this podcast more because that was a very interesting interview, not only about the fight, but also, of course, a little bit about his personal life as well. But, good on Steve Von Fulton. Hopefully he's getting over everything. He became a 2-time champion, a 2-weight division champion, so very good on him. But at the end of the day, he is going to have to get over that excuse about the weight. You did not lose that fight because of the weight, bro. You lost that because of the skills. But what that tells me is that Fulton really knows that Inoue is just more skilled than him anyway. But that pretty much is about it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you all later.